A few weeks ago, I made another visit to RAF Coningsby in Lincoln, home of the Royal Air Force Battle of Britain Memorial Flight. The BBMF are the proud custodians of P7350, the only Spitfire still flying that saw action in the Battle of Britain, and has been described as possibly the most precious flying machine on the planet. You can see it here in the background being returned to the hangar. They're also well known for maintaining and flying one of only two airworthy Lancaster bombers, as well as several rare and important Hurricanes and later model Spitfires. It is now 3 years since AuthentiKit started working with the BBMF on a Spitfire simulator, and this latest visit marks a major milestone in realizing the potential of this project. When I first visited RAF Coningsby, the aim was to help them create a replica Spitfire Mark 9 simulator with a view to using it as a PR tool. Fairly soon, however, the level of interest within the flight suggested a potential role for pilot training and display familiarization. For the project team of AuthentiKit volunteers and BBMF engineers, this meant our focus was on kitting out the cockpit with replica Spitfire controls that felt and operated as much as possible like the real thing. A major boost came when Squadron Leader Mark Discom, known as Disco, joined the team as our key sponsor. Disco is an ex-officer commanding for the BBMF and saw the potential for the creation of a training device which would allow pilots to practice emergency procedures which would be impossible in real Spitfires, such as a wheels-up landing in the event of engine failure. This, in turn, led to a new set of requirements for the project team. First, we added emergency controls, such as a canopy eject and a nitrogen blowdown handle. Another key requirement was for a more accurate flight model. At standard RPM and manifold pressure, the BBMF pilots expected airspeeds to match their own Spitfires, and in the event of lost power, it was critical that glide slopes were also accurate. Fortunately, our friends at Flying Iron Simulations, who created the Spitfire Mark 9 for Microsoft Flight Simulator, were happy to help. This photo from April 2023 marks a very big day for the project team. To see the Royal Air Force training with the AuthentiKit equipped Spitfire was when we truly felt the impact of what we had built. At this stage, the project found itself at a pivotal point. The simulator had proven itself and won key support for a valued role, but there was no clear documentation around its use or scope. So, to be taken more seriously, a degree of formality was needed. Fortunately, Disco was in the perfect position to support this, as he himself transitioned into a new role of standards and evaluation. It was now his job to ensure that BBMF aircrew and operational standards were maintained consistently and at a high level. Given the innovative use of virtual reality technology combined with consumer-grade simulator software, this was always going to be a difficult and somewhat time-consuming task. And sadly, it could not be completed before a very tragic event in May 2024, which would impact everyone in the BBMF. The loss of a senior officer resulted in the grounding of all Merlin engine Spitfires for the whole of the 2024 season, and was a very sad and unsettling period for everyone on the flight and the great many people who care deeply about the BBMF. And this brings us to my latest visit, which was hugely significant for 3 reasons. Firstly, the BBMF was days away from being granted permission to release Merlin engine fighters back to flight status, increasing the importance of the simulator for 2025 season training. Secondly, Disco's work on formalizing the role of the simulator was bearing fruit, and this would legitimize the simulator as a recognized BBMF training device. And the third reason was that I had managed to finish a complete re-engineering of the flight stick, which until that point had always lacked a realistic enough feel to give the pilots full confidence for training. One particular area of weakness in the first generation flight stick was the return on the pitch axis. It was too weak and lacked a distinct neutral position. So, having spent over a year prototyping and testing our completely re-engineered G2 flight stick, February 25th would be the day when I would find out whether it would receive the approval of highly experienced Spitfire pilots and senior officers of the Royal Air Force, starting with our sponsor, Squadron Leader Mark Discom. So what's your feeling about the return forces?
Straight away, I'm getting, it feels, because there's more for me to feel against it, it's better straight away. Because that's, you know, I'd like to say that's one of my better takeoffs in the simulator. There's no dead spot in the middle now.
Perfect.
You know, there is instant reaction, which is nice. And the roll and pitch now feels more harmonised, like in the real aircraft.
Okay. Well, that is a good start. But would it continue to behave realistically under a forced landing?
No, massive difference on the stick. That makes a big difference.
What I didn't tell Disco for this first run was that I had left out a new component that I hoped would improve the feel even more. A hydraulic damper on the roll axis. Being more of an engineer than a pilot myself, I couldn't be sure though if theory would translate to a real improvement.
Just a little bit more feel there. No, I like that.
Brilliant.
I think that's better,
Good.
without a doubt.
Good.
There's just some other feedback I'm getting through the stick as well, I think.
Yeah.
Which, I don't know, makes it feel more of a mechanical and not just against a spring.
That was it. Yeah.
So as you say, it feels like I've got the chains and the pulleys.
Yes.
And I would say, yes, that's what I'm feeling now. I'm feeling like there's a mechanical linkage going somewhere. Yeah, I like that.
Perfect.
Yeah, very good.
That was excellent news. Disco then gave us a very helpful overview of his thought processes in an engine failure and how he would evaluate his options.
Visceral experience, and I mean the noise and the vibration and the smell, that's missing. So you miss that element, but the actual flying, the things, my thought processes are still the same as flying. You know, looking over my shoulder, what's gone wrong, how much energy, you know, when I shut the engine down then, can I make it back there, or can I make it back to, that's the thought process. It's very hard to train for in the live environment. We don't do that sort of thing. So that ability to go, right, the engine stopped, what are you going to be able to do now? Where can you get to, what you can do? And that's where I think it's really good. I think for the new pilots, having a look, because the local graphics are good enough that you can do the display sequence. So before they're in a Hurricane for the first time ever, you're actually sitting there going, well, I can see what I'm trying to do. I can see what the pattern over the ground is. So I think now, we'll move this on, get the boss in later, and then hopefully next week get the group captain in and move forward. It's good. Yeah, really impressed.
Well, that was exactly the outcome we had all been hoping for. And next, it was the turn of the boss, Squadron Leader Mark Sugden, to give his verdict.
Exactly what you'd expect the speed to be. That's really good. Because I think the before when I flew it, she's really overpowered.
Okay, yeah.
I like how realistic that is.
What, to bring it back the RPM?
As in it bangs.
Yeah, so if you do in the real aircraft, you come back over too close to the idle, you will get back fine.
All right.
And that actually just to go forward again.
If you just put the fuel pressure light on.
Yeah.
It's 5, canopy's gone, props going coarse, magging it off. best landing I've done so far.
Okay.
What was the actual failure you gave me, sir?
Oh, I hit everything because I wanted you to crash in the ground. So eventually
right.
I hit the fire, oil leak, coolant leak, and fuel low pressure. It was like, right, I want you to stop flying now.
Yeah.
The only thing that's spared is the gear, the chassis, and the hydraulics, wasn't it?
Yeah, but that was really good. And I don't know what my rate of descent was, but it felt.
I think it's about right in this.
I agree.
Didn't shut the canopy, but you didn't jettison it, but because it was already open, so that's good.
It's that was really
What did
good.
you get to move where? Fuel was stayed on?
Fuel stayed on, so I magged it off.
Magged it off.
And
RPM
so I
course.
had RPM course and I magged it off as I went over the trees.
Yeah, okay.
Is what I did. I didn't use flap, and I was 135 over the hedge.
Which is a good place to be.
And I've used.
It was a genuine honour standing alongside as the officer commanding the BBMF put our simulator through its paces, and one thing I really noticed was a real sense of concentration and engagement. It was clear that despite the limitations of a VR headset, the experience was visceral, and I'm sure the boss's adrenaline levels were elevated at critical moments during that landing. Exactly what you would be hoping for to create a powerful training experience. And I am delighted to report that in the week following my visit, the simulator was indeed demonstrated not only to Group Captain Robbie Lees, but Air Vice Marshal Mark Fluin. And in the last few weeks, the simulator has been given the formal title of BBMF Spitfire Virtual Reality Trainer. And it has its own proper home in the hangar, putting it at a much higher state of readiness for pilots wishing to set up a training session. All of this meant that when the BBMF held their training event for new fighter pilots on April 11th this year, the VRT was front and centre. In this video you can see Flight Lieutenant Andy Preece at the controls. Andy has flown with the BBMF for over 6 years and has over 4,000 hours on 13 aircraft types. That is a wealth of experience, and when you combine it with an immersive, authentic simulator, the BBMF has a powerful new tool for preparing the next generation of Spitfire pilots. Sharing this with our community, I can't help but reflect on how many people made this possible. Though some of the BBMF team have moved on, the legacy of their involvement lives on in every flight. At AuthentiKit, we have moved on to new aircraft and new horizons, but I don't think we'll ever be part of anything more meaningful. This simulator may one day help save lives, and that gives everything we've done a lasting purpose.
My nose up until I'm through halfway around, and my nose through the horizon.